Hi, here is a explanation video on which navigation mode you should pick for your space mouse in Blender. So the vast majority of the time you should be in a free or fly mode, because in this mode your pivot point, which defines when you frame selected in Blender, where you see with the keyboard you can orbit around your selection, you can zoom far, for example, still orbiting around the selection, and you can pan. So no matter your zoom level, you can pan, you see, at the same speed. So if you pan very far, you're panning like a giant, and if you pan very close to your subject, you see you're panning like a small insect, like very precisely. So with the keyboard you have these three options: orbiting with middle mouse, zooming, and panning. And in fly mode, with your space mouse, you basically have the exact same behavior, meaning you can zoom with your mouse wheel, and your panning with the space mouse is in 3 dimensions, not 2 like a mouse, but you can also pan forward and backward with the space mouse. And you have 2 additional dimensions that are the rotation, which you do not have with a regular mouse and keyboard, except in walk mode. But with the space mouse you have this all at once. You can pan in 3 dimensions while you basically rotate in 2 dimensions, vertical and horizontal. So fly mode allows you to basically navigate everywhere in the world, always at a constant speed, no matter the size of your subject, like a huge cube or a minuscule object. You see, I'll always fly at the same speed. Even if I select a vertex that's like less than a millimeter big, I always fly at the same speed. And no matter the distance, as well as the size, but also the distance of your subject, you see, I always fly at the same speed. Now, if you go in object mode, which is the case for people who also work in like industrial design, who usually only have one object in their world, your pivot point, your rotation, is not your camera, but your subject, basically. So the huge limitation that comes with this is you cannot, you see, move forward. If you move forward, your camera stays stuck, because it's not a pan like in fly mode, it's a zoom, meaning you cannot go past your subject because you're totally zoomed on it, and your camera thus gets frozen in space. So the only advantage of this is it allows you to orbit around your subject a little bit faster than in fly mode, because in fly mode you need to compensate a bit between moving and rotating, and in object mode you're only rotating. But in Blender you simply have the middle mouse click, which is extremely more reactive and precise than the space mouse in orbit mode. You see, it's quite slow using the space mouse to orbit, and with the middle mouse button it's way faster and more precise. So there's not really an advantage to use the orbit mode, as you have the middle click of your regular mouse. But there is a huge limitation, which is you cannot navigate in your scene, only around your current selection. Then there's been the auto orbit center feature that's been added, which basically tries to automatically like guess or invent or find a pivot point depending on your field of view, but that's by nature essentially unpredictable. It cannot be predictable, since it's not you, the user, who have control over this pivot point. So you never know when here the camera gets frozen, because the pivot point has been defined by the software somewhere in space. You don't know where, and mostly even if you knew, you don't have control over it. You can't decide if it's a good pivot or a bad pivot. Essentially, it prevents you to fly. Here I'm stuck in a 2D plane because the pivot is somewhere. So the only way to unlock the camera is to frame an object, but you never know when this automatic pivot point is gonna be reset or updated. So when it's silently, randomly reset to a new place, your camera suddenly behaves differently because your distance to the pivot suddenly changes. The scale of your pivot is also changing. And so they also added the use selected items, but that's impossible to navigate continuously with this mode, because the only way to use it obviously is to select object to keep navigation, because otherwise, you see here my camera is stuck because I'm too close to the pivot point of this object. I've passed the pivot point, so my camera is glued, frozen in the world. So I need to pause navigation, select another set of objects, then I can try to navigate again, but here you see my camera is still frozen. So I select another object, my camera is still frozen. So basically, the orbit or object mode factually is limited and unpredictable. It's by nature with the auto mode. No matter the engineering, even if there was an AI like trying to guess extremely precisely with a big database, it will still be unpredictable by nature, because it's not you, the user, who decides what you want to navigate around, what is or are your subjects. So again, in fly mode, this is perfectly consistent and stable. Your pivot point is under your full control. You just frame the selected, exactly like the keyboard navigation. It's perfectly consistent. It's one-to-one the same behavior between space mouse and keyboard. So to me, any new user should, even coming from another software where the logic is orbit, because you only have one object, in Blender you should use the fly mode, because that's where you won't have any limitation. You can navigate everywhere, always at the same speed. Your camera never gets frozen, and you have full control. Like you know that your speed is matching your selection. If I select huge objects, I can move around them always at the same speed. And if I take distance with the zoom, it behaves exactly like the keyboard navigation. It still offers exactly the same reactivity. You see keyboard, space mouse, no matter the zoom level. If I go, again on something very close, you see I have the same speed between panning and space mouse. And so this is the case only with the fly mode. The thing is, they removed support for the fly mode in Blender 4.5, but hopefully there is growing pressure from all users to restore support, so we can keep continue using Blender and our space mouse after Blender 4.4. So thanks.